them all what I'm made up. Strut down the hall, won't stop till I get enough.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving into something pretty fundamental, wouldn't you say? This relationship between the brain and the mind.
Absolutely. It's fascinating stuff. Your notes really highlight this core idea. You know, the brain as the physical hardware and the mind, well, the mind's like the software running on it.
Hardware and software, that's a good way to put it. They're distinct, but totally connected, shaping pretty much everything we do.
Exactly. And understanding how they interact. That's key. It offers insights, into reaching our potential, but also into why we sometimes, sabotage ourselves.
Right. So that's our mission for this deep dive, essentially. Let's unpack how this connection works, where it shines, and where it can trip us up. The sources you shared give a really compelling picture.
They do. So maybe we should start with the basics, the biological side of things.
Good idea. Lay the groundwork.
Okay, so the brain.
Yeah.
It's a physical organ.
Yeah.
About, 1.4 kilos?
Mm-hmm.
Just packed incredibly densely with neurons.
It's kind of mind-boggling to think about. All that biological stuff constantly firing away. And then there's the mind thoughts, feelings, beliefs. It feels less tangible.
Well, that's it. The mind isn't something you can, hold in your hands. It emerges from all that complex electrochemical activity in the brain's circuits.
And those circuits are shaped by everything, aren't they? Genetics, experiences, our environment.
Precisely. They all mold the neural pathways.
Yeah.
And every single thought, every emotion, it actually corresponds to a pattern of activity firing within those pathways.
Okay, so brain, the machinery, the activity patterns. But the mind is where the interpretation happens. That's how the same event can feel totally different to different people.
Exactly that. Think about a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
The physical sensations, the speed, the G-force, they're pretty much the same for everyone on the ride.
Yeah, physically it's the same ride.
But one person feels exhilarated, pure joy,
Sure.
while the person next to them might be absolutely terrified.
And the difference is?
It's how their mind interprets those raw signals from the brain, based on past experiences, maybe beliefs about safety, just their general mindset at that moment. It gives meaning to the biological input.
That really shows the mind's power in shaping our reality. Okay, so when this partnership works really well, when brain and mind are aligned, what does that look like?
Well, that's when you see some amazing things. The mind can actually direct the brain's activity to achieve stuff that seems, extraordinary.
Like athletes.
Perfect example,
Yeah.
Olympic athletes. Of course, they have incredible physical conditioning, but it's also the intense mental focus. Their minds are literally guiding neural pathways to fine-tune muscle memory, speed up reaction times.
So the mental focus is like a performance enhancer almost.
Yeah, in a very real way, yes. And it's not just sports. Think about artists in that state of creative flow.
Right, completely absorbed.
Their mind is focused, guiding the brain to translate an inner vision into something tangible, paint on canvas, notes in music, whatever it is.
Or entrepreneurs visualizing success, planning things out.
Exactly. That act of vividly picturing an outcome, of mentally walking through the steps, it engages the brain in problem solving. It makes the goal feel more achievable and directs the brain's resources towards it. The mind sets the target, the brain works on hitting it.
Mind sets the intention, brain figures out the how. Love that. This brings us to something really hopeful you mentioned, neuroplasticity.
Ah, yes, neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Such a powerful concept. Basically, our brains aren't fixed, they're not static, they can reorganize themselves.
Throughout our lives, not just when we're kids.
Throughout our lives. And the key thing is, deliberate mental effort, mental training, can cause actual physical changes in the brain.
How does that work?
Well, when you repeat certain thoughts or actions, you strengthen the neural connections involved. It's like walking the same path through a forest. The more you use it, the clearer and easier it gets.
So habits, good or bad, are basically well-worn neural paths.
Exactly. And mental training, things like meditation, visualization, cognitive reframing, these are like workouts for your brain.
Workouts, so they actually build muscle in the brain, metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, yes, but with real physical effects. Regular meditation, for instance, studies show it strengthens networks involved in attention and emotional control. Visualization reinforces pathways linked to goals.
And things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right, that's all about identifying and challenging negative thought patterns. Doing that literally weakens those old, unhelpful pathways and helps build new, more positive ones. Practice makes the brain more resilient, more efficient.
That's incredibly empowering. The idea that we can actively shape our own brain structure through our thoughts, but it's not always positive, is it? the mind can also lead the brain down some bad roads.
That's the flip side, absolutely. Self-sabotage is a real thing driven by this connection. Think about chronic stress or anxiety.
Okay.
The mind perceives threats, maybe not physical ones, but social or work-related stress.
Yeah.
And it keeps activating the amygdala.
The brain's alarm system.
Exactly. It's like the alarm is stuck on even when there's no immediate danger.
And being on high alert all the time, that can't be good.
It's definitely not. Over time, it messes with your sleep, can weaken your immune system, throws your mental balance off. Your body is constantly braced for a threat that isn't really there in that immediate physical sense.
Wow. Okay. And what about negative self-talk, that inner critic?
Oh, that's a big one. That voice saying, I'm not good enough, I'll fail. It feels like just thoughts, but they trigger physiological responses.
Like what?
They can actually release stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. Even minor negative self-talk can do this. And these hormones, they cloud judgment, kill motivation.
And end up reinforcing the belief that you can't do it.
Precisely. It can become a really nasty self-fulfilling prophecy. The mind writes this negative script, and the brain, biologically, starts to follow it.
That sounds like a tough cycle. Your sources mentioned depression as a really stark example of this negative interplay.
Yes, depression is complex, but it often involves this kind of negative feedback loop. You might have changes in brain chemistry, neurotransmitter imbalances affecting mood.
Right, the biological component.
And at the same time, the mind might get stuck ruminating, just dwelling constantly on hopelessness, negative thoughts, past failures.
And the thoughts make the chemistry worse, and the chemistry makes the thoughts worse.
That's often how it feels, yes. The ruminative thoughts can actually reinforce the chemical imbalances. It makes it incredibly difficult to break out of without help.
So just telling someone to think positive isn't really enough in that situation.
Usually not, no. Often the brain needs support, maybe medication or other therapies to help rebalance the chemistry first. But, and this is crucial, the mind's power and neuroplasticity can be harnessed for recovery too.
Okay, how? You mentioned CBT earlier.
Right, cognitive behavioral therapy. It gives people tools to first notice those distorted negative thoughts and then critically to challenge them.
Challenge them, like argue with yourself.
Sort of, but in a structured way. You examine the evidence for the negative thought. Is it really true? What are other more balanced ways to see the situation? And by consciously practicing this, challenging the old thought, replacing it with a more realistic one, you start to weaken those old negative neural pathways.
And build new ones.
Exactly. You're actively rewiring. It takes practice, consistent effort, but you're retraining the brain through conscious mental focus.
And there are examples of this working, right? People overcoming fears or addictions.
Absolutely. Someone overcoming, say, a public speaking phobia through gradual exposure and positive self-talk, they are literally rewiring their brain's fear circuits.
Wow.
Or a former smoker who consciously finds new routines to replace the old smoking triggers. They're actively reshaping the neural circuits tied to that addiction. It shows that while our initial wiring matters, the story our mind tells itself profoundly shapes our brain's journey.
That's a really hopeful perspective, but we also need to be realistic. Your sources mentioned the limits of mind over matter.
Yes, that's a really important point of balance. The mind is powerful, incredibly so, but it has limits when the brain's physical structure or chemistry is severely compromised.
Like with injuries or diseases.
Exactly. Traumatic brain injuries, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, or even severe treatment-resistant chemical imbalances. These can significantly impair function in ways that willpower alone just can't overcome.
So mental effort isn't a magic bullet for everything.
No. In those cases, medical intervention targeting the physical brain issue is essential. It's about recognizing both the mind's influence and the brain's biological reality.
Makes sense. So given all this, how do we actively cultivate a healthier mind-brain balance in our daily lives?
Well, several practices come up again and again. Mindfulness meditation is a big one.
How does that help specifically?
By training you to stay aware of the present moment without getting swept away by judgments or worries. This seems to strengthen the brain's ability to regulate emotions and reduce that constant mental chatter.
Kind of like stepping back from the stream of thought.
Exactly. You observe them without necessarily engaging or believing them automatically. And then there are the basics, which are easy to overlook, but absolutely crucial. Physical health. Regular exercise is fantastic for the brain. Good nutrition provides the fuel it needs, and sleep, proper, restorative sleep, is non-negotiable for brain repair and function.
So taking care of the body is taking care of the brain's hardware, which supports the mind's software.
That's a great way to put it. These things create the foundation for a healthy mind to operate effectively.
And you also mentioned that just understanding this connection is powerful in itself. Why is that?
Because knowledge is power, right? When you truly grasp that your thoughts physically change your brain, you start paying more attention to your internal dialogue.
You become more vigilant.
Yes. You're less likely to just let negative thoughts run rampant. You realize you can be an observer of your thoughts, and you can choose to intervene to challenge the ones that aren't serving you.
So it shifts you from being passive to being an active participant in your own mental state.
Precisely. And technology is even starting to play a role here too, isn't it?
Yeah, you touched on that. Things like neurofeedback.
Right. Devices that give you real-time feedback on your brain activity. You can literally see how your thoughts or focus affect your brain waves and learn to regulate them more consciously.
That seems pretty futuristic.
It is, but it's happening now. And things like virtual reality therapy too, helping people confront fears, heights, spiders, whatever, in a safe, controlled VR environment to basically recondition those fear responses in the brain.
So technology can become a tool to kind of enhance this natural mind-brain partnership.
Exactly. Augmenting our own ability to train our minds and brains. But ultimately, the core agency remains with us, meaning the brain provides the circuits, the pathways. But it's your mind, your conscious choices, your focus that determines which pathways get used, which get strengthened, and which fade away.
So we are the architects.
In a very real sense, yes. It's both humbling, realizing the complexity, and incredibly empowering. You have agency over your own mental landscape.
Okay, so pulling this all together, this mind-brain system is, well, extraordinary, capable of amazing creativity, resilience, but also, if we're not careful, self-destruction.
That sums it up well. And the keys seem to be awareness, paying attention to what's going on inside, and deliberate practice. Nurturing helpful thoughts, challenging unhelpful ones.
And taking care of the brain's basic needs.
Absolutely. Providing that healthy foundation.
This has been really illuminating. The core message really seems to land on the power we have to consciously manage this relationship.
It really does. You decide, ultimately, which neural pathways get the traffic, which ones you strengthen through your focus and your actions.
So for everyone listening, maybe the call to action is to become, what did you call it, a vigilant gardener of your inner world.
I like that. A vigilant gardener. Plant seeds of positivity, maybe just through a few minutes of mindful breathing. Weed out the unhelpful thoughts by questioning them, looking for evidence.
And feed the garden, feed the brain with the basics. Good food, movement, sleep.
Exactly. And maybe try something small, right now even. Take 5 minutes. Just notice your breath. If a negative thought pops up, just observe it, and then gently try to reframe it. Find a slightly more balanced or positive angle.
Because every little choice like that strengthens a different pathway. And that future self, you want to be more resilient, more creative. They're kind of depending on the gardening you do today.
Well said.
Yeah.
That future self is counting on the choices you make right now. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.